Please subscribe, like, and share. It really helps us out. And of course, if you have any questions, comment below, and we will answer you as soon as we can. Welcome to this video in our series on IGCSE Business Studies. This is Unit 5, Part 1. In today's lesson, we will be learning about business finance, needs and sources. If you haven't seen our previous videos, click on the card above.
First off today, let's start with some definitions. Finance is the money required in the business. Finance is needed to set up the business, expand it, and increase working capital. This is for the day-to-day running expenses.
Startup capital is the initial capital used in the business to buy fixed and current assets before it can start trading.
Working capital finance needed by a business to pay its day-to-day running expenses.
Capital expenditure is the money spent on fixed assets. These are assets that will last for more than a year. Examples are vehicles, machinery, and buildings. These are long-term capital needs.
Revenue expenditure, similar to working capital, is the money spent on day-to-day expenses that do not involve the purchase of long-term assets. Examples are wages and rent. These are short-term capital needs.
Now let's look at sources of finance. Internal finance is obtained from within the business itself. Some examples of this are retained profit, profit kept in the business after owners have been given their share of the profit. Firms can invest this profit back into the business. What are the advantages? Does not have to be repaid, unlike a loan. No interest has to be paid. But disadvantages include: a new business will not have retained profit. Profits may be too low to finance. Keeping more profits to be used as capital will reduce the owner's share of profit and they may resist the decision.
Next, sale of existing assets. Assets that the business doesn't need anymore, for example, unused buildings or spare equipment can be sold to raise finance. Advantages include: makes better use of capital tied up in the business, does not become debt for the business, unlike a loan. But disadvantages are: surplus assets will not be available with new businesses, takes time to sell the asset and the expected amount may not be gained.
Another way to raise finance is by the sale of inventories. This is the sale of finished goods or unwanted components in inventory. The advantages: reduces costs of inventory holding. But disadvantages include: if not enough inventory is kept, an unexpected increase in demand from customers cannot be fulfilled. Yet another way is from the owner's savings. For a sole trader and partnership, since they're unincorporated, this being when the owners and business are not separate, any finance the owner directly invests from his own saving will be internal finance. The advantages are: it will be available to the firm quickly. No interest has to be paid. But, again, a disadvantage includes: it increases the risk taken by the owners.
Now, let's look at external finance. External finance is obtained from sources outside of the business. First up, issue of shares. This option is only for limited companies. Advantages: a permanent source of capital, no need to repay the money to shareholders. No interest has to be paid. Disadvantages: dividends have to be paid to the shareholders. If many shares are bought, the ownership of the business will change hands. The ownership is decided by who has the highest percentage of shares in the company. Next, bank loans. Money borrowed from banks. Advantages: quick to arrange a loan. Can be for varying lengths of time. Large companies can get very low rates of interest on their loans. Disadvantages: need to pay interest on the loan periodically. It has to be repaid after a specified length of time. Need to give the bank collateral security. The bank will ask for some valued asset, usually some part of the business, as security they can use if at all the business cannot repay the loan in the future. For a sole trader, his house might be collateral. So there is a risk of losing highly valuable assets.
Debenture issues. Debentures are long-term loan certificates issued by companies. Like shares, debentures will be issued, people will buy them and the business can raise money. But this finance acts as a loan. It will have to be repaid after a specified period of time and interest will have to be paid for it as well. An advantage: can be used to raise very long-term finance, for example, 25 years. But a disadvantage: interest has to be paid and the debenture itself has to be repaid. Next, debt factoring. A debtor is a person who owns the business money for the goods they have bought from the business. Debt factors are specialist agents that can collect all the business debts from debtors. Its advantages: immediate cash is available to the business. Business doesn't have to handle the debt collecting. But a real disadvantage is: the debt factor will get a % of the debts collected as a reward. Thus, the business doesn't get all of their debts.
Another source would be grants and subsidies. Government agencies and other external sources can give the business a grant or subsidy. The advantage: it does not have to be repaid, it is essentially free. The disadvantage: there are usually certain conditions to fulfill to get a grant. For example, to locate in a particular underdeveloped area. Next, microfinance. Special institutes are set up in poorly developed countries where financially lacking people looking to start or expand small businesses can get small sums of money. They provide all sorts of financial services. Finally, crowdfunding raises capital by asking for small funds from a large pool of people, for example, via Kickstarter. These funds are voluntary donations and don't have to be returned or paid a dividend. Maybe I should start a Patreon?
Moving on, short-term finance. Short-term finance provides the working capital a business needs for its day-to-day operations. Overdrafts. Similar to loans, the bank can arrange overdrafts by allowing businesses to spend more than what is in their bank account. The overdraft will vary with each month, based on how much extra money the business needs. Advantages include: this is a flexible form of borrowing since overdrawn amounts can be varied each month. Interest has to be paid only on the amount overdrawn. Overdrafts are generally cheaper than loans in the long term. But disadvantages are: interest rates can vary periodically, unlike loans that have a fixed interest rate. The bank can ask for the overdraft to be repaid at a short notice. Next, trade credits. This is when businesses delay paying suppliers for some time, improving their cash position. The advantage: no interests, repayments involved. The disadvantage: if the payments are not made quickly, suppliers may refuse to give discounts in the future or refuse to supply at all.
Now let's look at long-term finance. Long-term finance is finance that is available for more than a year. First, loans. These are available from banks or private individuals. Debentures. This is an issue of shares. Hire purchase. This allows a business to buy a fixed asset and pay for it in monthly installments that include interest charges. This is not a method to raise capital but gives the business time to raise the capital. The advantage: the firm doesn't need a large sum of cash to acquire the asset. The disadvantages: a cash deposit has to be paid at the beginning. And it can carry large interest charges. Next, leasing. This allows a business to use an asset without purchasing it. Monthly leasing payments are instead made to the owner of the asset. The business can decide to buy the asset at the end of the leasing period. Some firms sell their assets for cash and then lease them back from a leasing company. This is called sale and leaseback. The advantages. The firm doesn't need a large sum of money to use the asset. The care and maintenance of the asset is done by the leasing company. The disadvantage. The total cost of leasing the asset could finally end up being more than the cost of purchasing the asset.
What are the factors that affect the choice and source of finance? Purpose. If a fixed asset is to be bought, hire, purchase or leasing will be appropriate, but if finance is needed to pay off rents and wages, debt factoring, overdrafts will be used. Time period. For long-term uses of finance, loans, debenture, and share issues are used, but for a short period, overdrafts are more suitable. Amount needed. For large amounts, loans and share issues can be used. For smaller amounts, overdrafts, sale of assets, debt factoring will be used. Legal form and size. Only a limited company can issue shares and debentures. Small firms have limited sources of finances available to choose from. Control. If limited companies issue too many shares, the current owners may lose control of the business. They need to decide whether they would risk losing control for business expansion. The risk or gearing. If a business has existing loans, borrowing more capital can increase gearing. This is the risk of the business. As high interests have to be paid even when there is no profit, loans and debentures need to be repaid. Banks and shareholders will be reluctant to invest in risky businesses.
Lastly for today, finance from banks and shareholders. The chances of a bank being willing to lend a business finance is higher when a cash flow forecast is presented detailing why finance is needed and how it will be used. An income statement from the last trading year, the forecast income statement for the next year, to see how much profit the business makes and will make. Details of existing loans and sources of finance being used. Evidence that a security/collateral is available with the business to reduce the bank's risk of lending. A business plan is presented to explain clearly what the business hopes to achieve in the future and why finance is important to these plans. The chances of a shareholder being willing to invest in a business is higher when the company's share prices are increasing. This is a good indicator of improving performance. Dividends and profits are high. The company has a good reputation and future growth plans.
Thank you for watching our video. Please like, subscribe and share. And comment below so we can clarify things for you.